Hi, in this week's episode, we are going to go back to the whole love language issue because there seems to be so much misinformation out there, which is creating problems rather than helping us navigate the challenges. So, without further ado, let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. You're listening to All Cards on the Table podcast with Claire and Sylvia, a show that talks about how men and women aren't so different from each other. We just don't speak the same language. We will dissect every topic and put an end to miscommunication. So, get ready to get uncomfortable.
Hi, and welcome back. My name's Claire Attio.
Hi everyone, this is Sylvia Jaira.
And as I said in this week's episode, we're going to be revisiting the whole love language and communicating with our partners. You've got a TikTok clip that we kind of listened to, and this is why we've come back to it. So we're going to give it a play for you now.
Relationship, a 14-year relationship at my age. You know why? After 14 years, I recognize he don't love me the way I want to be loved. I just don't want to be loved like this. See, I don't get to tell people how to love me. I get to see how they love and then choose if I want to participate. So for 14 years, I was hoping, okay, he's going to get it. 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 And then I said, you know what? He ain't getting it. And it's okay. I don't choose to participate in the way he loves. I got a bunch of degrees, and it took me 14 years to get that. Thank God I couldn't get pregnant.
Now, I think listening to that, I mean, the kind of takeaway for me was, I think what she's trying to get across there is we cannot change other people. That was what I felt, which is really good advice. You can't change other people, but you've got the other end of the spectrum where she's been with somebody for 14 years, waiting for him to get it. But has she told him? And this was a question that Sylvia kind of posed. Has she told him how she wants to be loved?
Yeah, I came when I first saw that TikTok clip, I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to be in that relationship either. It's so draining. But what made me think that was I actually I saw a friend yesterday, and it was along the ways the same conversation that he wasn't sure if he wanted to be part of that relationship. And I said, well, what's your love language? What's your partner's love language? And he didn't know. And he was like, well, have you said anything? He's like, no, he should know. And I'm like, no, he shouldn't. He's just not going to automatically assume. I mean, this is something that I realized we need to discuss from the beginning. Like, this is how I want to be loved, and this is what makes me happy, and this is my love language.
Mm-hmm.
And if you set that from the beginning and then they choose not to do it, then yeah, get out of that because you're not going to get it ever. But somebody's love language could be like acknowledgement, gifts, praising, hugs, kisses, constantly being told, I love you, or I care for you, I like you. While another person could be just listen to me, be there for me. I don't need advice. I just need you present, or someone I can go to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't think because we feel like we need to be loved a certain way that's how the other person wants to be. And so we've given them that we need, but we're not actually giving them what they need. So when I said that to him, he's like, oh, no, I don't know what his love language is. I've never asked him. And I was like, well, maybe you should go home tonight and have this conversation.
Yeah.
And it was like a shock. And I realized, wait, I know we've done an episode on love language, but I don't think we elaborated on all the spectrums of it because, you hear so much of it, and you hear so many things from TikTok and from social media from Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff about love relationship. You have bundles and bundles of books on, marriage counseling, relationship and stuff like that. But we haven't really told someone how we want to be loved, because I think we ourselves don't know how. We haven't spent enough time with ourselves to know what we want and what we love and what makes us happy. We don't know ourselves.
No, and it's one book away. It's the book is called The Love Language. It's one book away, and it changes your life. That's the magical thing of it. And I think the other aspect of this is we are kind of, in the last decade especially, there has been a greater emphasis on personal development, which there wasn't in the past. And so people that have been in relationships for 15, 20 years, they were still being sold the love dream, the rom-coms and the Hollywood, which is basically, I mean, you're sailing down a river that's going to dry up very, very soon, kind of going down that road. And I'm not saying that from a cynical point of view or not being romantic, because there's many different forms of romance as well. And so it's learning. The last podcast, we focused more on learning about ourselves, the importance of homing in on ourselves and knowing what we want, what we like, how we want to be, because you can't tell another what you want if you don't know who you are. And I think this is a key point. But I love the love language. I love those very, because it allows you to really pinpoint, because even though I think it's, if I remember rightly, because it's a long time since I read it, it's like four main categories. And there may be points within there that you think, well, no, that doesn't suit me. And that's absolutely fine. But you have a basis of how you love. And then you can get a basis of how they want to be loved. There's also some online tests as well from the love language that you can actually do. So you can kind of answer the questions. It's like a questionnaire, and answer the questions for your partner. So even if you're with a partner that didn't read or don't want to read it or is not interested, you could actually sit and do a test. And that would be the course of action that I would actually recommend, is that if you're in a relationship that you're not receiving what you want, but you're also not sure whether you're giving what your other partner wants, is to go online, do the test, find out what their love language is approximately, because you're going to answer questions in ways that they wouldn't answer. Let's keep that in mind. But you can get an approximation of what their love language is, and then start to deliver the love language that you believe them to be, and see how the dynamics change. And from there, you can then start to have conversations and start to make some decisions, not beforehand.
Yes. No, absolutely. I agree. I think for me would be first, like, find yourself. I think you need to know who you are first, because I, even with everything that I know, and sometimes we forget that it took me a while to figure out what was mine, because I was like a giver and I constantly being there, and I had to take, like, okay, well, what do I believe makes somebody else happy is really what makes me happy. So for instance, I would give gifts and I would give flowers, and I would be, oh, I'll be there all the time. And oh yes, I will cook for you. I will, things like that. And I realized later that, like, I'm doing that because I think that makes them happy, because that's what makes me happy. So that is my love language. And so I realized that my love language is, togetherness, family, being together with a person, going to places and discovering new things, as every girl wants, little gift here and there, and flowers, of course, a random flower show up. But I've never expressed that, because I would constantly say, I don't need that. I'm not like those girls. I don't say that. or I'm not affectionate. I don't like PDA. And that's what I was saying, but that's not what I wanted because I thought that's what that's I guess I was scared to feel needy that they would walk away.
Hmm.
So I wanted to play it cool. But it's not until I had to be honest with myself with what really makes me happy, not compromise on that I realized that either they're gonna stay or go. And if they go, that's fine because we're not gonna match anyway. I'm not gonna be happy. But being that honest with yourself of like, yeah, well, if I come off needy, then oh well, there is someone else who's gonna want to fill in those shoes. But
I
being
think,
honest with yourself is the key too. Like,
yeah, yeah, it's that fear. I think this is the problem, is because there is so much media out there. I mean, how many times do we watch rom-coms where they talk about a woman in their 30s that isn't married, that hasn't had children, how she's going to be
mm,
past it, and she's going to be this and she's going to be that, and it's feeding into our fears rather than us sitting back. And it's interesting actually, because the younger generation are really not up for it. They are really not. They are not.
you're not willing to compromise.
Yeah,
You know what they
they're
want.
not. They're not. It's fascinating to watch it, because they
Hmm.
are not. They are. There are lots of things where they're quite gullible, and I don't mean that in any rude or derogatory way, but there are some things that I think, really? Okay. But when it comes to their personal stability and their emotional intelligence, they've got it. They have got it. Now, are a lot of them still being pushed through funnels? Yeah, they are. They get to a certain age, and that kind of goes out the window, because there is still, especially for women, a big drive. But it is that the key is knowing yourself. The other key is knowing yourself in that moment.
Hmm.
What are you actually wanting and needing? And and being able to, because I there's a difference between you being in a good place in your relationship and wanting a cuddle. And this has come up before, because I don't, if I have to ask for things in relationships, then, and it's certain things, but I have noticed it depends on where I'm at. So if I'm in a really good place in my relationship, then to ask for a cuddle because I've had a hard day at work, not an issue.
Hmm.
But if there are issues within the relationship that have
Yeah.
been unresolved
Yeah.
anyway, and so not only have you got to know yourself, but you've got to understand the dynamics and the layering that's going on within the relationship.
Hmm.
Because if there are issues within the relationship, and I had a really hard day, and let's be honest, some days when we've had really hard days, it's physically visible. We can
Yeah.
see it in other people, and other people can see it in us. And if I have to ask for a cuddle on those types of days, then, and there are already unresolved issues, then forget it. That's it.
Yeah.
Forget it. I am not going to ask.
Hmm.
But I am going to be as moody as hell, which
Hmm.
is, I am getting better, but there will be a little part of me that will still sit there and go, okay. So
Yeah.
there's no investment coming towards me today.
And I think that goes all, a lot of mostly men, I would say, do that. I've gotten the answers of when I say, why would you do that? Obviously, that person's having a hard time, or I'm having a hard time, or when I see it, I was like, they just need a hug. The answers that I've gotten was, I'm scared. I don't know what to do in that situation. And I say, like, okay, so how would your parents, okay, so then tell me your relationship with your parents. When your parents fought, how did your father uh fix that? So he's like, I don't know. I never saw it. I just the next day they were fine. And so that's the key that also I've realized that we haven't been taught how to handle those situations, especially with men. I think women tend to be, because more caring, we kind of approach it in a sense of nurturing, but men do not. And if they have never been given that example, it's almost impossible for them to see it. And that for me, it's like, well, you should know, and you should always uh like if you see someone that's physically hurting, why wouldn't you, like, where's your compassion in that, right? And it's like they freeze. They don't know what to do because they weren't given that experience. So they're really like caught with like a, with a deer with the headlights on.
I hear
And
you. I hear
and I
you.
know a lot of women were like, no, but they should know. And I'm saying they
Yeah,
really
I hear
don't.
you, but I also hear the flip side of the coin of that, because if they knew to give you that compassion in the beginning,
Hmm.
and this is what
But this
women are becoming more alert. Women are actually being more mindful and
but this is
remembering more.
exactly what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Did you say that that's what you needed? Because they will do it. They're just like little robots. Okay, when you see me distressed or angry, don't be scared, come and hug me and this and that. That's when I needed the most. They will do it. But if you have never expressed that or have told them that when you're in distress, anger, fearful, or empathy, you just need something, that is the way for you to feel loved and nurtured, they will not get it.
No, but what I'm saying is, if you've been in that relationship and within the first couple of years, you were getting that without asking, and then it stops, that's when you know that the investment is stopped.
I
And
think
that
it's,
is where a lot of women get fed up.
I would say, at least from what I've experienced, is that in the first couple of years, you're invested on each other and it's the honeymoon, so you want to be a part of it. But when things start going stale, to say, it's been forever, the relationship, men tend to think like, I've been in this relationship this long. You should know that I love you. You should know that I'm here. They don't think like us. They don't require the every day I love. Like if you say I love you, that for them it's gonna last longer than it lasts for us. If you give them a hug, that's gonna last longer for them. The insecureness than it lasts for us. And we need to realize that men don't actually function that way. So after 10 years of being together and he's no longer doing that, a reminder would be good. Even though we say, why don't that's a part where most women have a problem. It's like, well, I don't need to remind him or tell him, he should just know. And I said, no, because he thinks everything's good. Like he thinks everything, because it's been 10 years and you haven't said anything.
You
So you
see,
need
there's still
to,
a part of me there, Sylvia, okay, it's been 10 years, and yes, we can all get complacent and we can all get into routines,
Mhm.
but there still needs to be investment for a relationship to last. There has to be an investment on both sides every single day for a relationship to last.
Right. And for them being part of it and everything's going dandy, that's his investment. And that's the part where a lot of women have a hard time accepting or understanding that that's to them, it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's been working for 10 years, so why change it? And I think that's the part where we keep getting it wrong, because I'm like, okay, like this woman, it's been 14 years and I don't want to be part of that love. And I'm like, okay, well, in those 14 years, did you say something? How many times did you say it? I mean, if you're going every day, oh, I want this, and he doesn't do it, and you go again and he doesn't do it, then yes, please walk away. He's not going to get it. He's an idiot. He's complacent. He doesn't want to be a part of this relationship. Please do yourself a favor and walk away. But if all of a sudden everything's fine and it's just going stale, nothing's being done, and you haven't said anything, and then all of a sudden you're going in this rut and you're not feeling well, you're not getting the love that you want, and you haven't said anything, don't expect him to just know what to do. For all he knows, everything's great. He wasn't even aware that things were like that. And when
Yeah.
you're in a foul mood, he probably is doing his love language of, when I'm upset and angry, I want alone time to rethink, like get it to just be left alone and gather my thoughts, so he's giving you what he would want to get when he's flustered and upset or something, versus we want something different. And that's what I want to say. Like, we need to say, like, when you're flustered and angry, do you want me to leave you alone, or do you want me to hug you? Do you want to be with when we talk about it? What is comfortable for you? Because when I'm flustered and angry and I had a shitty day at work, what I need you to do is come give me a big old hug and kiss, go make me some coffee, and if you would rub my feet, that would be great. So, but we don't say that. We just come home and almost demand like he should know. And that's the problem, because he's giving you the love that he would want when he's coming home and just had a full day, shitty day. He's like, I just wanted to decompress to be left alone. So he sees that and runs away because he's giving you what he thinks you would want because that's what he would want. And that's the mismatch that we get.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't said anything, yeah, I can see that. It's like a societal, especially in Western society, that it's the lack of communication, that lack of, and so many. I mean, I've had it in my relationships. I've seen it in family relationships. I see it in friends' relationships, where the men just stop communicating. And I think this is the biggest issue. And a lot of the time, you're right, they stop communicating because they think everything's fine and they're getting their head down and they've got their own worries and they're not sharing it, and they're bringing in the bread, and they're trying to save up for the holiday, and the kids are wanting this, and they've got all of that going on. And so they're not, but it's that breakdown in the communication that causes the problems. And the not sharing of worries. And I think this is where we need to be, because a lot of so you've got men clamming down, which is really annoying. I'm going to be honest. When you want a conversation as a woman and you're with a man and they just clam up and they don't talk to you. But then you've got women that also need to take and be more mindful of what's going on in his life. Why is he gone quiet? And provide the space so he can actually open up, should he so choose to. Not all of them are going to open up, because again, society has taught them not to open up. They've taught them it's not masculine to open up. They've taught them it's not. And this is where it's relearning, renegotiating. But this comes straight the way back to what we said in our other podcast. You've got to hammer out what your almost protocols of your relationship are going to be before you move in together.
Absolutely.
All these are going to be. I always remember my dad, my mum, and mum and dad were. I mean, God, they had a passionate relationship. I mean, we were quite a dysfunctional family because of it. But that was of that generation. But the love between them was really, really strong. And the one thing that they see, one of their policies would, that if they had an argument, if they had a disagreement, they would not go to bed without resolving that. And so as kids, some nights we would hear them at it, hammer and tong, all night long.
I was gonna say, oh, that sounds like a long night.
Oh yeah, and everybody, we would know as kids to stay in your bed, that stay out of this one, stay in your bed. It's got nothing to do with. And I think this is the difference as well, is we would know as kids it's got nothing to do with us. We never had this worry that, oh, mum and dad would be divorced, or oh, what's going to happen, or we never had those types of worries as a kid. We always knew that we were loved, albeit a dysfunctional family, but we knew we were loved, and we knew it didn't even enter our heads. It didn't even enter our heads about, because you hear parents worrying now. They don't want to have arguments in front of the kids in case the children feel that the parents are going to get divorced and this, that, and the other. And it didn't even occur to us. But I grew up watching them argue it out until they came to some resolve. So for me, I built that into my love language as a young child. So to be with somebody that doesn't communicate,
so then you can see
it's like purgatory. Right,
yeah,
huge issue.
And so, for instance, my love language in that sense is go to sleep on it, and let's talk about it in the morning. Okay. And he's more like you with my husband. He wants to talk it through. And I'm like dead tired. I'm like, I can't function right now. I can't think. I'm just going to agree so I can go to sleep. Or, because I have no desire of dealing with this right now. And eventually we said that. I told him, I was like, listen, for me, you need to give me a day or two to calm down, analyze the situation, and then we can have this conversation, because it's not gonna happen tonight, and it's not gonna happen today. So what we actually ended up doing is, like, I would email, or he would email me what that he was upset about, or I'm upset about. We had time to read it, because that's another thing. Like, when you're talking and you're arguing, the other person gets defensive and you don't really get your points across. And then you start bringing up things from the past or stuff like that. And it doesn't really solve anything. So I just emailed I emailed him and I said, okay, this and this is what happened. This is where I went upset, this and that. And then maybe sometimes it's an immediate response. Sometimes it's a day later. In between those times, we just keep it like neutral, like, okay, nothing's not gonna have a conversation. And when we finally, it's like, all right, are you ready? We literally sit down. It's like, okay, are we ready for that conversation? I'm like, yes. But by this, it's like, okay, I hear you, and this is my point of view, or you know what, I'm sorry, or something like that, depending on that. And there's sometimes I would be like, oh shoot, I didn't see that. I didn't see that, where that was coming from, or that I said that and that hurt you because of that day you were feeling bad. But we've been together for 18 years, so we've had our bumps around the road to get to that part. But I wish I would have known that in the beginning, because that will make a huge difference in how he deals with that type of, situations, because I had to learn so much about him and his culture later on in life, because I couldn't understand where he was coming from, why he would just shut down and not say anything. And all of that all goes to play, like you said, because like you said, I'm so used to my parents doing this and everything's great. So I expect that the same when we have problems, that we talk them through till we find a solution. And the other person could be like, I was taught not to say anything, sleep on it, and then deal with it with a much better, clear head.
And so you then have a conversation and reach a compromise.
But then if you don't communicate that, could you imagine the disaster that is? One person's like, you don't care because you don't want to have this conversation. This is just not going to work out. And the other person's like, my God, why wouldn't you leave me alone? Like, get to your head. This is not the time. And I think that's one of the biggest relationships or mistakes we've ever had, because that's the number one thing that I keep hearing from both ends. And I'm like, okay, did you guys know and I always go, how did your parents argue? Because that tells me a lot about how they want to resolve problems.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, though, you do need to be careful within this given situation, especially in this example, because non-communication is also used as a control mechanism within relationships. And so that has to be a factor that needs to be weighed in. But it is. It's negotiating. It's in the two examples that you gave, had you had that information when you first got together, you could have sat down before you moved in and said, right, okay, what is going to be our policy, not what is the rest of the world doing. And I think this is something that we really have to take on board, not what is everybody else doing, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are going to be our policies? So like my parents, I mean, yeah, it must have been because there were some days where it didn't just go on all night. It carried on for a few days. It was, and they weren't screaming and shouting at each other. And I think that's the thing, because they did resolve every disagreement. They didn't drudge up anything from the past. So whatever they were arguing about, they would come at it from a million different angles from their perspectives and throw it into the pot. But that could go on for some considerable time, if not days, sometimes. Not that often, but sometimes. But it's sitting there and working out what are your policies? What are you going to be? So you look at the main frames of, so communication, how are we going to communicate? What's going to happen when we have an argument? And I think the biggest problem is, and I've noticed this, and I kind of kept that, I've noticed this within coaching, is a toxicity with positivity. It's like nobody wants to talk about the crappy times, the dark times, the heavy times, the shitty times, whatever you want to call it. They exist. It doesn't matter how wonderful and how positive you are. Life will throw you curveballs. There will be incidences and situations where challenges come onto the table. And so if you're a couple and you already know, okay, we don't know how we're going to deal with it as in the dynamics of what we're dealing with, but this is what we have agreed with each other will happen so that we can get through a difficult time. And it's so important. Is it romantic? No, it's not. It's absolutely not. But it's the difference between a relationship or a marriage that lasts a few years and a relationship and a marriage that has complete longevity.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we need to, in that sense, it's like we need to stop this whole fairy tale that, happily ever after, because, there should have been like, and so it begins.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So Disney is like, hello, change your happily ever after to so it begins.
And I think that's a really good place to wrap this up. So that's goodbye from me.
And me. And as always, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Till next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so, and please leave a review, as it helps us grow and bridge the gap between the sexes. If you have any topics you would like us to cover, shoot us an email. Until next time, go out and practice putting all your cards on the table with no judgment, expectations, and fear.